Ever wonder what breakfast looked like back in the 1800s? Forget your avocado toast and morning smoothies for a second. The 19th century American breakfast was a whole different ball game, and it gives us a peek into the lives of the folks who lived during that time. So, grab your imaginary time-traveling fork, and let's dig into a real 1800s breakfast. One of the biggest myths out there is that everyone ate the same thing. Not even close. What you munched on in the morning really depended on where you lived, how much cash you had, and what kind of work you did. The 19th century was a whirlwind of change in America. The Industrial Revolution was revving up, cities were booming, and immigrants were flooding in from all over the globe, bringing their own delicious food traditions with them. All of this mixed together shaped the morning meal in ways you wouldn't believe. Let's kick things off with the working class, the true backbone of the nation. For a farmer or a factory worker, breakfast was more than just a meal. It was the fuel they needed for a long, grueling day. Picture this: hearty, heavy dishes that packed a punch. A typical breakfast for a laborer might include leftover meat from last night as dinner. Think cold cuts of beef or pork. And steak. Surprisingly common. It was often fried up alongside some potatoes. And let's not forget about bread. Not the kind you find in plastic bags today, but dense, homemade loaves made from cornmeal or whole wheat, slathered with butter or molasses. Sausages, bacon, and salt pork were staples too. Foods that really stuck to your ribs and gave you the energy to work from sunrise to sunset. I mean, they needed those calories. And a lot of them. In rural areas, life revolved around the farm, and breakfast reflected what was produced right there on the land. A farm family's breakfast was a robust affair. Along with those cured meats, you'd find plenty of eggs, fresh from the chicken coop, milk, cream, and butter, straight from the family cow. Porridge was super common too, but not the instant stuff we see today. This was usually made from cornmeal, known as mush or grits, especially in the South. It would be boiled for ages and served with milk, butter, or if you were lucky, a drizzle of maple syrup. And in the South, biscuits were the real MVP. Fluffy, buttery biscuits, often smothered in gravy, were a beloved breakfast staple that provided those much-needed carbs and fat for energy. But let's switch gears for a moment. What if you weren't a farmer or a factory worker? What if you were part of the wealthy elite, living it up in a fancy house in Boston or New York? Well, your breakfast would look a whole lot different. For the upper class, breakfast wasn't just about fuel. It was a grand performance, a chance to show off wealth and social status. This was the Victorian era, after all, and excess was the name of the game. An affluent family's breakfast would be a multi-course extravaganza, served on fine china with silver cutlery. Instead of just one main dish, there would be a whole spread of options. You might kick things off with some fresh fruit. Think luxurious oranges or melons, which were pretty pricey back then. Then you'd move on to the main courses. Yes, plural. There could be grilled fish, like mackerel or shad, alongside lamb chops or veal cutlets. Eggs? Oh, they'd be served in all sorts of ways. Poached, shirred, or scrambled, often with a splash of cream. And let's not forget those elaborate dishes like chicken croquettes, kidneys on toast, or sweetbreads making an appearance. And the bread. Forget about simple cornbread. The wealthy enjoyed a whole variety of baked goods, light, fluffy muffins, scones, toast points, and maybe even some French-style pastries if their cook was really talented. To drink? It wasn't just water or milk. Freshly brewed coffee and tea were the norm, served with cream and sugar. The entire meal was a leisurely event, a far cry from the quick, functional breakfasts of the working class. It was a social ritual, a time for the family to gather before the man of the house dashed off to work and the lady of the house got busy managing her household. Now, let's chat about regional differences, because America in the 1800s was anything but uniform. In the Northeast, with its bustling port cities, you'd find a wider variety of imported goods. Coffee, tea, and sugar were more accessible, and a New England breakfast might feature baked beans, a tradition that started with cooking them overnight so they'd be ready for the morning. Brown bread made with rye and molasses was the perfect sidekick, and being close to the coast, fish like cod was a common breakfast item, often salted and turned into delicious codfish cakes. Head down south, and you can really see the influence of agriculture and African-American food traditions. Corn was the star of the show. Grits were a breakfast staple served creamy and often paired with shrimp, a dish that has its roots in this period. And yes, biscuits and gravy were iconic. Country ham, cured with salt and aged for months, brought that salty, savory punch that was uniquely Southern. The hot, humid climate also shaped food preservation, which is why cured and smoked meats were so common. Out west, breakfast had its own unique flavor. On the frontier, it was all about survival and making do with what you had. You, cowboys on a cattle drive, might whip up sourdough biscuits cooked in a Dutch oven over a campfire, alongside bacon and strong, black coffee boiled in a pot. For settlers, breakfast could be whatever they managed to hunt or grow. Game meats like venison or rabbit might make the menu, and Johnny cakes, a type of cornmeal flatbread, were easy to whip up and perfect for life on the go. And we can't overlook the impact of immigration. The 19th century saw waves of immigrants from Ireland, Germany, and later from Italy and Eastern Europe. They brought their breakfast traditions along, and boy did they shake things up. German immigrants, for example, popularized sausages and a variety of breads and pastries. They also helped create a bakery culture in cities, making different kinds of breakfast breads more widely available. While it took a bit for these foods to become mainstream, they began to add new flavors and dishes to the American breakfast scene, planting the seeds for the diverse food culture we enjoy today. But what about the poorest folks in society? For them, breakfast was often a meager affair. It might be nothing more than a piece of bread, maybe stale, dipped in milk or coffee to soften it up, or a simple bowl of cornmeal mush with a pinch of salt. For many, breakfast was a luxury they couldn't always afford, and their morning meal was just about staving off hunger until they could find their next bite to eat. Choices? Not really. Just the bare minimum to survive. So, as you can see, the 1800s breakfast was a complex tapestry woven from threads of class, region, and culture. It could be a plate of cold pork and cornbread for a farmer, an elaborate spread of fish and fruit for a banker, a bowl of grits and ham for a Southerner, or a simple piece of bread for someone struggling to get by. It truly reflected the realities of life in 19th century America. It tells a story of hard work, social ambition, regional pride, and the daily struggle for survival. Next time you sit down for your morning meal, take a moment to think about its history. The journey from a plate of steak and eggs to a bowl of cereal or a protein shake is a long one, filled with fascinating stories about who we were and how we lived. The 19th century breakfast shows us that what we eat in the morning has always been about more than just food. It's about our lives, our struggles, and our triumphs. Thanks a ton for joining me on this tasty trip back in time. If you found this journey through history as fascinating as I did, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What would you have chosen from a Victorian breakfast menu? Can't wait to see you next time.